In the heart of a forgotten monastery, nestled high in Ethiopia's rugged mountains, a monk cradles a manuscript older than the empires that tried to erase it. Its pages, written in the ancient Ge'ez script, hum with secrets, prophecies that speak of a time when Africa will rise, not as a footnote in someone else's story, but as the author of its own destiny. But here's the question that burns. Why were these scriptures hidden? Who feared the truths they held? And what happens when a continent begins to remember what was stolen? This is the Hidden Awakening, a journey into the prophecies buried in Africa's sacred texts and the modern leader who might be living them. Today, in Episode 4, we unravel the lost words of the Ethiopian Bible, texts that the West dismissed, colonial powers suppressed, and time nearly erased. These are not mere stories, they are blueprints of a future foretold, whispers of a divine script that Africa is only now beginning to read aloud. And at the center of this awakening stands a figure, Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, whose words and actions echo the ancient promises of a continent reborn. Is he a revolutionary, a prophet, or something more? Let's step into the mystery. The Ethiopian Bible, one of the oldest and most complete Christian scriptures on earth, is a treasure trove of texts that predate the King James Version by nearly 800 years. Unlike the 66 books of the Western canon, it contains 81 to 88 books, including the Book of Enoch, Jubilees, and Di Baruch, texts deemed apocryphal by European councils but revered as divine by Ethiopia's Orthodox Tewahedo Church. These books speak of celestial watchers who fell for sharing forbidden knowledge, of scattered nations destined to return, and of a time when truth would pierce the darkness. In the Book of Enoch, we read of a coming judgment where the righteous shall rise from their sleep, Enoch 91:10. In Jubilees, we find a promise that the children of the righteous will reclaim their inheritance, Jubilees 32:19. And in Second Baruch, a vision unfolds of a people gathered from the ends of the earth to restore divine order, Baruch 78:7. These are not abstract metaphors, they are calls to awakening, etched in ink and preserved through centuries of invasion, theft, and silence. But why were these texts sidelined? The answer lies in power. When European missionaries arrived in Africa, they brought a Bible stripped of these books, claiming they were irrelevant or heretical. Yet the Ethiopian Church, one of the earliest Christian communities, dating back to the 4th century, never wavered in its fidelity to these scriptures. The Garima Gospels, hidden in a Tigray monastery, are a testament to this resilience, illustrated manuscripts from the 5th century, their colors still vivid, their pages bound in a way that predates European bookmaking. These texts were not just preserved, they were protected, as if Ethiopia knew the world would one day need their wisdom. But the question lingers. What truths were so dangerous that they had to be buried? Could it be that these prophecies foretold an Africa too powerful, too united, too awake to be controlled? Imagine a world where these scriptures were never hidden. Picture a continent where the prophecies of Enoch and Jubilees were taught alongside the Psalms, where Africans grew up knowing their ancestors were not just survivors, but bearers of divine promises. This is the world that the Hidden Awakening seeks to uncover, a world where Africa's spiritual heritage is not a footnote, but a foundation. And today we ask, what if these ancient words are coming to life? What if the scattered nations are returning, not in chains, but in triumph? And what if a leader like Ibrahim Traoré is not just fighting for Burkina Faso, but fulfilling a script written millennia ago? As we dive deeper, prepare to question everything you thought you knew about Africa's past and future. The Ethiopian Bible is not just a relic, it's a roadmap. Its prophecies are not just predictions, they are invitations. And the story of Traoré is not just politics, it's a pulse, a rhythm that beats in time with the ancients. So, stay with us as we decode the signs, connect the patterns and uncover the truth, because the awakening has begun and the world is watching. The rhythm of Africa's story is not random. It pulses with purpose, a cadence that echoes through centuries. From the ancient prophecies of Ethiopia's sacred texts, a pattern emerges. Leaders who rise, not by chance, but as if called by a script older than time itself. These are not isolated moments, they are verses in a song of awakening, sung by figures like Haile Selassie, Thomas Sankara, and now Ibrahim Traoré. But here's the question that pulls us deeper. Why do these leaders, separated by decades, speak the same language of destiny? What unseen thread ties their visions to the ancient promises of a continent reborn? Let's step back to the early 20th century, to a moment that shook the spiritual foundations of the African diaspora. In 1930, Ras Tafari Makonnen was crowned Emperor Haile Selassie I of Ethiopia, taking the title King of Kings, Lord of Lords, conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. For the Rastafari movement, born in Jamaica but rooted in African longing, this was no mere coronation. It was prophecy fulfilled. The Book of Revelation speaks of a Lion of Judah who would break the seals of divine truth, Revelation 5:5, and Selassie, descending from the Solomonic dynasty traced back to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, seemed to embody that promise. His reign was a beacon, a declaration that Africa could stand unbowed against colonial powers. When Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1935, Selassie's defiance, his plea to the League of Nations, ignited a fire in the hearts of millions. Rastafari believers saw him as more than a king. He was a living testament to the Ethiopian Bible's vision of a scattered people returning to greatness. But was Selassie the end of the prophecy, or just its beginning? Fast forward to the 1980s, and another voice rises from the Sahel. Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary president of Burkina Faso, took the stage not with crowns or titles, but with a vision so bold it felt scripted by the ancients. Sankara spoke of a self-determined Africa, free from the chains of neo-colonialism, where farmers and workers would reclaim their dignity. His policies, land reform, women's rights, and a rejection of Western debt, were not just political, they were spiritual acts of restoration, echoing the Book of Jubilees' promise that the righteous would inherit the land. Jubilees 17:3. Sankara's Burkina Faso, renamed from the colonial Upper Volta to mean land of upright people, was a living metaphor for the prophecies of return and renewal. Yet, his assassination in 1987, orchestrated by forces threatened by his vision, left a question hanging in the air. Was Sankara's dream silenced, or was it merely paused, waiting for the next verse to be sung? Now in the 21st century, the rhythm quickens again. Enter Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's young military leader, who seized power in 2022 not to build a throne, but to dismantle a system. Traoré's words cut like a blade. He speaks of purging colonial influence, reclaiming Africa's resources, and returning to ancestral values. These are not the platitudes of a politician. They are the echoes of a prophecy that refuses to die. Like Selassie, Traoré invokes the pride of a sovereign Africa. Like Sankara, he demands economic and cultural liberation. But here's where the pattern sharpens. Traoré's mission aligns with the Ethiopian Bible's vision of a time when the nations shall walk in the light of truth. Baruch 72:2. His rejection of Western aid, his push for local production, and his call for African unity feel less like policy and more like destiny unfolding. Could it be that Traoré is not just repeating history, but advancing it, carrying forward a torch lit thousands of years ago? This pattern, Selassie, Sankara, Traoré, is no coincidence. It's a lineage of awakening, each leader building on the last, each vision rooted in the same ancient truths. The Ethiopian Bible speaks of a generation that shall rise to restore what was lost. Enoch 93:8. And across Africa's history, we see glimpses of that generation taking shape. From the Solomonic kings who guarded sacred texts to the revolutionaries who dared to dream of freedom, the continent has never stopped writing its own story. But the question remains, why now? Why does Traoré's voice resonate so deeply in this moment? Is it because the world is finally ready to hear what Africa has always known? As we trace this pattern, we begin to see Africa not as a land of scattered histories, but as a tapestry woven with purpose. Selassie showed the world that Africa could stand tall. Sankara proved it could stand free. Traoré suggests it can stand united. Each leader in their time has been a spark, igniting the same fire foretold in the scriptures. And that fire is spreading, burning away the lies of inferiority, the chains of exploitation, and the silence of forgotten truths. So, let's ask ourselves, what happens when a continent remembers its prophecies? What happens when a people realize their story was never broken, only interrupted? The air crackles with possibility when Ibrahim Traoré speaks. His voice, steady yet fierce, carries the weight of a man who knows the eyes of a continent are upon him. In Burkina Faso's dusty capital, he stands before crowds, not with promises of wealth or power, but with a vision so ancient it feels torn from the pages of a sacred text. Africa must be free, he declares, not just from chains, but from the lies that bind our minds. These words are not mere rhetoric. They pulse with a rhythm that feels scripted, as if echoing the prophecies of Ethiopia's forgotten scriptures. But here's the question that stops us in our tracks. Is Traoré merely a revolutionary, or is he a living chapter in a story written thousands of years ago? And if he is, what does that mean for Africa's future? Traoré's rise to power in 2022 was no ordinary coup. At 34, he became one of the youngest leaders in Africa, seizing control not to entrench himself, but to uproot a system rotten with colonial residue. His actions speak louder than manifestos, rejecting French military presence, nationalizing key industries, and prioritizing local agriculture over imported goods. These are not just policies, they are acts of reclamation, as if he's turning the soil of Africa's soul to plant seeds long buried. The Book of Enoch speaks of a time when the earth shall be cleansed from all defilement, Enoch 10:7, and Traoré's purge of foreign influence feels like a modern echo of that ancient promise. His call to return to ancestral values, community, self-reliance and pride, mirrors the vision in Second Baruch of a people walking in the ways of righteousness. Second Baruch 77:16. But the twist lies here. Traoré is not preaching from a pulpit or quoting scripture. He's a soldier, a man of action, whose every decision seems to trace the outline of a prophecy he may not even know. Consider his words in a 2023 speech. We will not be slaves to any system that does not serve our people. This is not the language of politics as usual. It's a declaration of spiritual warfare. The Ethiopian Bible, US prophecies, often describe a leader who will break the yoke of the oppressor. Jubilees 46:2, and Traoré's defiance of Western economic dominance, refusing IMF loans and expelling foreign NGOs, feels like a direct challenge to that yoke. Yet the question lingers, is he consciously fulfilling a divine script, or is the script fulfilling itself through him? His focus on cultural restoration, from promoting traditional Burkinabe textiles to reviving indigenous languages, aligns with the ancient text's vision of a people returning to their roots. It is as if Traoré is not just leading a nation, but summoning a continent to remember who it was before the world told it otherwise. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Unlike Haile Selassie, who was revered as a divine figure, or Thomas Sankara, whose charisma lit up the global stage, Traoré is an enigma, a leader who shuns the spotlight yet commands attention. His military fatigues and unpolished speeches contrast with the polished rhetoric of global leaders, yet they resonate with a generation hungry for authenticity. This contrast raises a deeper question. What if the prophecy isn't about a single Messiah, but about a collective awakening? What if Traoré's role is not to be the hero, but to ignite the spark that sets millions in motion? The Ethiopian Bible hints at this in its vision of a multitude gathered in unity, Baruch 78:6, suggesting that the true fulfillment of prophecy lies not in one man, but in a people rising together. Traoré's mission, then, is both personal and universal. His fight against neo-colonialism is not just Burkina Faso's battle. It's a call to every African nation to question the systems that keep them tethered. His emphasis on ancestral values is not nostalgia. It's a radical act of remembering, a refusal to let Africa's identity be defined by outsiders. And in this, we see the shadow of the ancient texts, the promise of a time when the scattered shall be gathered and the truth shall be known. Enoch 92:1. But the question remains, sharp and urgent. Can one man, even one as bold as Traoré, turn the tide of history? Or is his true power in showing others that they too can write the next chapter? As we watch Traoré move, deliberate, unyielding, like a man who knows the weight of his steps, we cannot help but feel the pulse of something greater. His actions are not just political, they are spiritual markers, signposts on a path foretold by prophets who saw this moment coming. And yet, the mystery deepens. How far will this awakening go? Will Traoré's vision survive the forces that crush Sankara and challenge Selassie? Or is this the moment when Africa's prophecy finally breaks free? The sun rises over Africa, casting light on cities and villages alike, where whispers of change are growing into a chorus. From the bustling markets of Lagos to the quiet hills of Rwanda, a movement is stirring, not led by armies or manifestos, but by a collective remembering. Across the continent, people are opening dusty books, questioning the histories they were taught, and rediscovering the sacred texts that once defined their ancestors' worldviews. This is not mere curiosity. It's a revolution of the soul, a reclaiming of truths long buried under the weight of colonial narratives. But here's the question that pulses like a heartbeat. What happens when a continent begins to read its own story? And what hidden power is unleashed when Africa remembers who it was meant to be? This awakening is not confined to scholars or priests. In Ethiopia, young artists are painting murals inspired by the Garima Gospels, their vibrant colors echoing the ancient manuscripts that survived centuries of plunder. In Nigeria, students gather in secret to study the Book of Enoch, asking why its visions of cosmic justice were excluded from their Sunday school lessons. In South Africa, activists quote Jubilees to demand land reform, seeing their struggle as part of a divine promise that the oppressed shall inherit. Jubilees 32:19. These are not isolated acts. They are sparks of a fire spreading across borders, fueled by a shared realization. Africa's history is not a tale of defeat, but a saga of resilience encoded in scriptures the world tried to erase. The question looms, why now? Why, after centuries of silence, are these ancient texts speaking so loudly? The answer lies in the rhythm of this moment. Across Africa, the old narratives are crumbling. History books written by colonial hands are being challenged. Holy books stripped of their African roots are being questioned. In Ghana, traditional priests are reviving pre-colonial spiritual practices, blending them with the Ethiopian Bible's teachings to create a new theology of self-determination. In Kenya, musicians weave lyrics from Baruch into songs of protest, singing of a time when the nations shall see the light. Baruch 72:2. This is not resistance for its own sake, it's a remembering, a piecing together of a fractured identity. The Ethiopian Bible, with its prophecies of restoration and unity, is no longer a relic in a monastery. It's a living text, a mirror reflecting Africa's potential. But here's the twist that changes everything. What if this awakening is not just about rediscovering the past, but about rewriting the future? What if the prophecies are not predictions, but invitations, calling every African to step into a divine script? This movement is not without its challenges. The forces that silenced Africa's scriptures centuries ago, colonial powers, global institutions, even internal divisions, still linger, ready to smother the flames of awakening. Yet, the momentum is undeniable. Social media platforms buzz with hashtags like African Prophecy and Ethiopian Bible, where young Africans share verses, debate meanings, and connect the dots between ancient texts and modern struggles. In Burkina Faso, Traoré's speeches are quoted alongside Enoch's visions, as if the two were written in the same breath. This is not blind faith. It's a deliberate act of reclaiming, a refusal to let Africa's story be told by anyone else. But the question remains, sharp and urgent. Can this awakening survive the weight of the world's skepticism? Or is it destined to grow stronger, like a river carving through stone? As this fire spreads, it carries a message. Africa is not just resisting, it is redefining. The continent is shedding the skin of a history written by others, stepping into a narrative that has been waiting in the wings for millennia. The Ethiopian Bible's prophecies of scattered nations returning, of truth rising from sleep, are no longer distant dreams. They are realities taking shape in the streets, in the songs, in the hearts of millions. And in this moment, we see the power of a people who are not just remembering, but becoming. So let us ask ourselves, what does it mean for a continent to awaken to its own prophecy? What happens when Africa stops asking for permission to be great and starts claiming the destiny it was always promised? The drumbeat of Africa's awakening grows louder, reverberating from the ancient monasteries of Ethiopia to the vibrant streets of Ouagadougou. It's a sound that carries the weight of centuries, the hopes of millions, and the promises of prophecies that refuse to be silenced. We've journeyed through the hidden scriptures of the Ethiopian Bible, traced the patterns of leaders like Haile Selassie, Thomas Sankara, and Ibrahim Traoré, and witnessed a continent rediscovering its soul. But as the final notes of this story linger, a question hangs in the air, sharp and unyielding. What if Africa's destiny is not a future to be written, but a past to be reclaimed? What if the prophecies we've uncovered are not just predictions, but a call to every heart to rise and act? This is the moment where history and destiny collide. The Ethiopian Bible's visions of scattered nations returning, of truth awakening from sleep, of a people united in divine purpose, are no longer confined to ancient pages. They live in the murals painted on Addis Ababa's walls, in the songs echoing through Nairobi's protests, in the policies Traoré fights for in Burkina Faso. These prophecies are not relics. They are roadmaps, guiding a continent toward a future it was always meant to claim. The Book of Enoch speaks of a time when the righteous shall shine like the sun. Enoch 104:2. And today, we see that light breaking through, not in one leader, not in one nation, but in a collective awakening that refuses to be dimmed. But here's the twist that changes everything. This awakening is not Africa's alone. It's a signal to the world, a reminder that truth, once buried, always finds a way to rise. Yet the path forward is not without shadows. The forces that suppressed Africa's scriptures, colonial empires, global institutions, and even the inertia of doubt still loom, ready to challenge this rebirth. The question is not whether Africa will rise, it's whether the world is ready for an Africa that knows its power. Traoré's revolution, like Sankara's before him, faces resistance from those who profit from a divided continent. The rediscovery of sacred texts faces skepticism from those who cling to sanitized histories. But the momentum is unstoppable because this is not just a movement, it's a remembering. It's the realization that Africa's story was never broken, only interrupted, and now the pen is back in its hands. So we ask, what role will you play in this story? Will you be a bystander or will you be part of the script? This is where you come in. If you feel the pulse of this awakening, if you believe that Africa is stepping into a divine narrative, then don't let this story end here. Share this video. Let the world know that the prophecies of the Ethiopian Bible are not myths but mirrors, reflecting a truth that has waited too long to be seen. Talk about it in your communities, question the histories you've been taught, and seek out the texts that were hidden. The Book of Enoch, Jubilees, 2 Baruch, they are not just scriptures, they are keys to understanding a continent's soul. And if you're in Africa or part of its diaspora, know this. Your voice, your story, your truth is part of this prophecy. The question is not whether it will be fulfilled, but how boldly you will help write its next chapter. As we close this episode, we stand on the edge of something greater. In our final installment, we will weave together the threads of hidden scripture, revolutionary leadership, and continental rebirth. We'll explore how Africa's awakening is not just a moment, but a movement, one that could reshape the world. The journey is far from over, it's only just begun. So, hold fast to this truth. Africa is not waiting for permission to rise. It is rising, and its story is being written in real time by hands that were always meant to hold the pen. Will you join them? Will you share this vision? Because when a continent awakens to its prophecy, the world cannot help but listen.